If you would have told me a year ago that I'd be singing the praises of the Universal Orlando Resort and that it would have effectively grabbed the Walt Disney World Resort by the collar and flung it off the podium for Best Theme Park, I would have told you were nuts. Why, you ask? Well, lack of experience with the resort for one, but also because, compared to Walt Disney World, Universal Orlando lacks in almost every way. And yes, I know saying as much will ruffle some feathers, but the numbers, they don't lie. Universal Orlando is smaller. Attendance is lower. What else is there to say? Still, Universal Orlando is a titan here in the Orlando area, offering up undeniably unique experiences, thrilling attractions, and high quality of service that would make even the most unapologetic Disney fan swallow hard at the realization that this is what once had the House of Mouse standing out above the rest.
And yeah, every time I visit Universal Orlando, I realize more and more just how much I love being here. And it's not the theme, it's not the attractions, although both of those things, specifically the attractions, definitely helps. It's the overall vibe, the experience of being here. In a nutshell, it's much more chill and enjoyable than you might expect. Certainly more chill and enjoyable than I thought it would be when I first purchased my ticket and visited for the first time.
The Universal Orlando Resort is located about 20 minutes from Orlando International Airport and just about as far from the Walt Disney World Resort. Sitting on a plot that's just over 1 square mile, the resort is currently home to 2 theme parks, 1 water park, and a shopping and entertainment district. While there's a little bit of something for everyone at Universal Orlando, the target audience is teenage to adult thrill seekers, with even the most child-friendly attractions gearing more towards a slightly older and more adventurous crowd.
You know, I think this kind of in and of itself contributes to the overall vibe of Universal Orlando Resort as a whole. Not because there's a lack of kids here, because while that's kind of true, it's also very much not, but more so because there seems to be like a much more defined demographic that Universal Orlando caters to. It has a better idea of what exactly it is, and it draws people in that know exactly what they want, or they have a better idea of what they want out of their vacation. And you know, it's interesting because we were just talking about this, or something like this, on the channel not that long ago, talking about like defining what vacation means to you and having a better understanding of what it is that you want out of your travels or vacations. I'll put a link to that in the description down below if you're interested in hearing more about what I have to say when it comes to defining vacation. But I think it's safe to say that Universal Orlando is one of those places where, in order to enjoy it, like truly enjoy it, you have to have an understanding of what it is you're getting into. You have to know what you want. And this is especially true if you're one of the many who's considering changing over from Walt Disney World vacations to Universal vacations for one reason or another. I mean, don't get me wrong, if that's gonna float your boat, I support that decision wholeheartedly. But I do think that it's worth recognizing that these are 2 very different places that cater to 2 very different audiences, and it's not a one-for-one swap like some people make it out to be. And I say that for reasons that go beyond the basics. We're not just talking about, you know, if your kids like Minions versus if your kids like Mickey Mouse. Even in what there is to do and see and experience here, there are major differences, especially when we're talking about things to experience and do here at Universal versus Walt Disney World, especially when we're talking about traveling with little ones.
Speaking of not being equal, we need to talk about what, at least in my opinion, has Universal standing out. Because while Universal does have its faults like anywhere else, what it does very well.
If there's one thing that stands out to me every time I visit the Universal Orlando Resort, whether I'm going to studios or Islands of Adventure, or if I'm just going to be wandering around City Walk, it's that being here isn't much of a to-do. It's straightforward, and at times, I don't know, I call it seamless.
It's a tried and true approach to operating a theme park, or any business really, that makes the experience of visiting Universal Orlando a pleasant one. There's no song and dance that sometimes comes with innovation for innovation's sake. They're not trying to fix any problem that's not broken. They know what works and lean into it, offering guests an experience that reduces stress on them and team members while also having the park operate as a well-oiled machine.
And I mean, you can see this kind of throughout the entire experience here at the Universal Orlando Resort. Security, we got metal detectors and x-ray machines. The same type of thing that 90% of people are already familiar with. And if you're traveling with a stroller or someone with a disability who needs a mobility device, you can all stay in line together and go through the same line together. They do have separate lines, but you don't need to be separated for your party. Headed into the park, no big deal. Scan the barcode on your ticket. Want to be able to take advantage of your annual pass discount? No problem. Barcode, baby. Simple, easy, elegant. As opposed to the approach that sometimes happens elsewhere, you know, where it's like complicated, there's a lot going on, and it works 60% of the time, every time.
These small and seemingly insignificant things might not seem like much on the surface, but they contribute in a big way to the overall experience, an experience that can be just as chill as it is thrilling, making Universal Orlando one of our favorite places to just be.
This is actually something Russ and I have been talking about quite a bit recently. You know, like the vibe of Universal as opposed to some of our other go-to places for a night out of the house. We like that we can wander through the park, strolling side by side, at least for the most part, as opposed to some other places that have us playing this like hours-long game of follow the leader. We like that we can stop in for a quick service meal or a snack and be able to sit down or find a place that's kind of quiet where we can pull off on a bench and enjoy what it is that we just spent however much money on. You know, all those things that we sometimes forget are really the bare minimum for a pleasant experience because people have convinced us that the alternative is totally normal.
It's not. And rather than leaning into crowdsourced excuses, Universal seems to nail the basics, meeting the fundamental needs of their guests to both keep them happy and keep them in the parks, creating the best path to a potential win-win. But even sitting here now, I can't remember the last time I was truly displeased with my experience at Universal Orlando, and I think that says something.
Of course, this has been my personal experience, visiting Universal fairly regularly for what has been nearly a year now. Will you have the same experience? Maybe, maybe not. And that's most definitely something that you should keep in mind, especially if you're planning a vacation here to Universal Orlando in the coming year, especially if you're planning to go to Epic Universe, which is the newest theme park that's going to be joining the lineup here at Universal Orlando very soon.
Still, there's really no getting around some of the fundamental truths of visiting Universal Orlando. The experience, even for the unfamiliar, isn't as complex a process as you might find it to be over at Walt Disney World, for example. It's more straightforward. In many ways, it's more of what you might describe as common sense. And for a lot of people, myself included, I think that's part of the appeal of the Universal Orlando Resort. It's a place you go to have a particular type of good time. And while there may be a few people who don't have a firm grasp on what that means wandering around, most guests at Universal do, leading to an experience that feels more like what you were aiming for and less like a stress test that has gone completely off the rails.
Of course, if you've ever been to Universal Orlando, we want to hear from you. Have you had an experience similar to mine? And if you've been to Walt Disney World as well, how do you feel Universal stacks up in comparison? Personally, I think both are great choices if you're planning a Central Florida vacation destination and theme parks are on your list of things to do, but I am gaining much more of an appreciation for Universal the more time I spend here. But like I said, I want to hear from you guys. But for now, I'm off. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Until then.